I'll never forget the moment I found the lump. I was only 38 years old, and it was just weeks before Christmas of 2020. The world was still unsteady, just beginning to come out of COVID. My marriage was unraveling, and I was in the beginning stages of separation. And yet, when my fingers brushed against something that wasn't supposed to be there, and the pain brought tears to my eyes, I knew. Before any test, before any doctor's appointments, something deep inside me already knew it was cancer. Welcome back to Chapter 2. This podcast is about rebuilding after life's hardest chapters. You know, the ones we don't choose, but that shape us in ways we never expected. Since October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I wanted to share something deeply personal, my own breast cancer story. My hope is that by opening up about my journey, I can shine a light not just on breast cancer, but also on resilience, rebuilding, and finding strength in the moments that try to break us. I'll never forget the look on the ultrasound tech's face as the screen lit up with my tumor. She didn't have to say anything. The concern in her eyes told me everything. And when the radiologist came in, his words confirmed what my gut already knew. All he could say was, "We need to get you in for a biopsy immediately." Less than 2 weeks later, I got the call that confirmed it all. At 39 years old, I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer, one of the most aggressive types and the hardest to treat. It didn't make sense. I was healthy, ate well, I exercised, hardly drank, never smoked, and no family history. Yet, here I was, facing something I thought only happened to older people. And to make things even more complicated, the world was just beginning to come out of COVID, and I was in the early stages of separating from my marriage. In those moments, it felt like everything was falling apart all at once. The early days were a blur of appointments, scans, and treatment plans. The treatment plan was intense. Chemotherapy, surgery, more chemo, the full marathon. And each step brought its own challenges. I remember the sterile smell of the hospital hallways, the endless waiting rooms filled with nervous faces. I remember clutching onto my phone, updating family and friends, trying to be strong in my words even when I was crumbling inside. It felt like I was living two lives. One where I was still a mom, still packing lunches, still trying to function through a pandemic and a separation. And another where I was suddenly a cancer patient, facing something that terrified me. And the questions never stopped swirling. How do I tell my kids? What will treatment do to me? How will I survive this? Breast cancer isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's relational. It touches every part of your life. There were nights I laid awake, wondering if I would see my kids grow up. There were mornings I forced myself out of bed, determined not to let cancer steal every ounce of normalcy for us. One of the hardest parts was realizing I was going to lose my hair. I know to some, hair may seem superficial, but for me, it felt like losing a part of my identity. It wasn't just about appearance. It was about feeling stripped of the person I had always known myself to be. Looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger staring back was one of the most painful parts of the process. During this time, there was another reality that was just as hard to face. The question of, what happens to my children if I don't make it? So, in the quiet hours between treatments, I began creating a binder. Page by page, I filled it with every detail someone would need to know to care for my kids. Their routines, favorite snacks, bedtime stories, all of the silly little details that made their world feel safe and normal. It was both my way of preparing and my way of loving them fiercely, even in the worst case scenario. That binder still sits on a top shelf in my home today, just in case. But here's what surprised me. As time went on, I began to see strength in that reflection and in those pages. I began to see a woman who was fighting for her life, fighting for her children. A woman who was showing up day after day, even when she thought she couldn't do it anymore. A woman who was braver than she had ever realized she could be. From the very start, I made a decision. If this chapter was going to change me forever, and it most certainly was, then I was going to make it mean something. I wasn't going to let it be just pain, just loss. I looked at my kids and thought they deserved to see me fight, to see me rise, to know that even in the darkest chapters, there can be light. And if this was going to be something that defines me for the rest of my life, I was in control of how. I refused to let cancer take my voice, my hope, or my ability to create something meaningful from the pain. So, I chose to make a promise to myself. This story would not end in despair. It would become the seed of something bigger, something that could help others. And that decision is what eventually led me here to create Chapter 2. It became my mission to make sure no woman felt alone in her rebuilding. That every story, no matter how hard, could become a story of strength and renewal. Looking back, here are some of the biggest lessons I learned and that I've continued to carry forward. Listen to your body. Early detection matters. If something feels off, trust yourself and get it checked because you know your body best. You are stronger than you think. I never thought I could endure what I did, but we often don't know our strength until it's tested. Community is everything. From friends, family, and even strangers who reached out, I learned how much we need each other, even if we think we don't. Identity is deeper than appearance. Losing my hair felt like losing myself, but in reality, I found a deeper version of me, one that wasn't tied to how I looked. Every chapter can have meaning, even the ones we'd never choose, especially the ones we'd never choose. I also learned the power of self-advocacy. I had to learn to ask questions, to push for clarity, to stand up for myself in medical spaces that can sometimes feel overwhelming. And if you're listening and supporting someone with breast cancer, know this. It's the small things that matter. A text that says I'm thinking of you. dropping off a meal, offering to drive to an appointment, or just sitting in the silence with them. Those gestures are lifelines. Now, 4 short years later, I see life differently. I value time more deeply. I'm more intentional about who and what I give my energy to. And I know that healing is not just about the body. It's about mind, heart, and spirit just as much. For me, breast cancer wasn't just a diagnosis. It was a turning point. It was one of the chapters that forced me to start over. And the reason I'm here with you today. And there's nowhere else I'd rather be in this moment. So, if you're walking through a hard chapter right now, whether it's cancer, heartbreak, burnout, or something else entirely, I want you to know this: you are not alone. This Breast Cancer Awareness Month, let's remember that awareness isn't just about statistics or campaigns. It's about real people, real stories, and the ripple effects of each journey. Thank you so much for letting me share mine. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need encouragement today. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next conversation. Together, let's keep writing our chapter 2s.